The candlelight flickered against stone walls as Luneth Frostmere stood motionless in the center of the chamber, her red dress a slash of defiance against the shadows that owned this place. 20 years old, and already she felt ancient with the weight of servitude pressing down on her shoulders like invisible chains. Outside, somewhere beyond these cold walls, her family slept safely in their beds, unknowing of the price their daughter paid each night to keep them breathing. Fredward Mullins circled her slowly, his white hair catching the dim light like frost under moonlight. Tattoos twisted across his pale skin, ancient symbols of power and dominance that seemed to move in the flickering darkness. He was beautiful in the way winter is beautiful, deadly and mesmerizing, a creature carved from ice and hunger. "You seem distracted tonight, Luneth." His voice was velvet and venom combined, a sound that had once terrified her but now merely exhausted her soul. She kept her eyes forward, her white hair falling like a curtain around her pale face, hiding the truth she carried in her heart like a sacred wound. "I am here, as promised. That is all the contract requires." "Ah, but I require so much more than mere presence." He stopped in front of her, close enough that she could feel the unnatural cold radiating from his body. Vampires carried winter in their veins, she had learned. They were beautiful corpses animated by darkness and desire, forever hungry for what they could never truly possess. Life, warmth, love. The debt her father had left behind was measured in gold and blood, a foolish gamble with creatures who counted time in centuries rather than years. 3 more years of service, she reminded herself. 3 more years and her family would be free. Her mother would never know the truth of what her daughter had become. Her younger brother would grow up believing their father's debt had been paid through honest work. The lie was the kindest thing she could give them. "Look at me." It was not a request. Fredward Mullins did not make requests. He issued commands with the certainty of someone who had lived long enough to forget what resistance felt like. Luneth raised her eyes slowly, meeting his gaze with the practiced blankness she had perfected over 2 years of servitude. But something flickered in her expression, something she could not quite contain. A memory, perhaps, or a longing so deep it had carved caverns in her chest where hope once lived. "You are thinking of him again." Fredward's voice changed, hardening like water turning to ice. His hand moved faster than human sight could follow, fingers gripping her chin with bruising force. The tattoos on his arms seemed to writhe with agitation. "The wolf." Luneth said nothing. Silence was her only rebellion, the single territory she still controlled. She would not give voice to what lived in her heart. She would not speak Daelor Nightreach's name in this place of shadows and cold stone. That name was hers alone, a prayer she whispered only to herself in the darkest hours before dawn. Fredward released her suddenly, turning away with inhuman grace. When he moved, he seemed to blur at the edges, as if reality itself struggled to contain his ancient presence. "I have been patient, Luneth. More patient than I have been in centuries. I took you as payment for a debt, yes. But somewhere in these 2 years, you became something else entirely." He paused at the window, looking out at the moonless night beyond. His reflection in the glass was faint, ghostly, as if even mirrors rejected his existence. "I find myself troubled by mortal feelings. Desire, possession. These things that once amused me now consume me. You have infected me with your humanity, girl. And I find I do not wish to be cured." Luneth felt ice spreading through her veins that had nothing to do with the temperature of the room. She recognized the tone in his voice, the dangerous shift from master to something far more complicated. She had seen the way he watched her lately, how his commands had softened at the edges, how he found excuses to keep her near. This was worse than cruelty. This was obsession wearing the mask of affection. "I am here to serve my family's debt, nothing more. Before we continue with the story, I want to thank everyone who supports the channel and loves our Alpha King romances. In the pinned comment, you'll find a special selection of the best Amazon audiobooks that inspire our stories. If you purchase any audiobook through those links, you'll be directly supporting the channel and helping us create more stories. Tell us where you're watching from and how old you are in the comments. I hope you enjoy the story. Her voice was steady, but inside, fear and fury warred for dominance. She thought of Daylor, as she always did in moments of darkness. The memory of him was her compass, her North Star, the only thing that kept her tethered to who she was beneath the servitude. She had loved him before the debt, before the darkness, before everything fell apart. They had met at a gathering between territories, a diplomatic meeting where her father had represented their small village. Daylor Nightreach, the Alpha King, had been everything the stories promised and more. Tall and powerfully built, with long black hair that fell past his shoulders, and a beard that framed features carved from determination and strength. But it was his eyes she remembered most, eyes that held centuries of wisdom and battle and loneliness, eyes that had found hers across a crowded room and recognized something, some connection that defied explanation or reason. They had spoken only briefly that night. She was nobody, the daughter of a minor representative, and he was a king among wolves, a legend who walked the earth with the weight of his pack's survival on his shoulders. But in those few stolen moments, something had passed between them. A recognition, a possibility, a promise unspoken. Then her father's gambling debts had surfaced. The creditors had come, and among them, Fredward Mullins, who collected what was owed with the patience of eternity and the cruelty of winter. You could be free, you know. Fredward's voice pulled her back to the present. He had turned from the window and was watching her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. The debt could be erased. Your family could be protected forever. You could have power beyond your imagining. Life beyond the brief flicker of mortal years. You could stand beside me, not as a servant, but as an equal. Luneth's breath caught. She understood what he was offering before he said the words. I could turn you, Luneth, make you what I am. Vampire, eternal, mine. The word hung in the air between them like a curse. She felt her heart hammering against her ribs, a frantic reminder that she was still alive, still human, still herself. I would never choose that. The words came out stronger than she intended, and she saw something flash across Fredward's face. Anger, perhaps, or wounded pride. His features shifted, becoming less human and more monstrous for just a moment before he regained control. You say never as if you understand what you refuse. I offer you immortality, Luneth. I offer you freedom from the fragility of flesh, from the tyranny of time. I offer you myself. He moved closer again, and this time she could see the hunger in his eyes clearly. Not just for blood, though that was always present with his kind, but hunger for something more complicated. Companionship, understanding, love, if a creature like him could still access such an emotion. And all I ask in return is that you forget him. Forget the Wolf King who did not come for you when you needed him. Forget the fantasy of a love that exists only in your memories. Stay with me. Choose me. Luneth felt tears burning behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She would not cry in front of him. She would not show weakness. My heart is not a debt that can be paid or traded. It belongs to me alone. And what I do with it is my choice. Then choose. Fredward's voice was cold now, stripped of pretense. His patience, legendary among his kind, had finally reached its limit. Choose to accept my offer, or spend the next 3 years watching me collect what is owed in other ways. Your family remains safe, but only as long as you please me, Luneth. Only as long as I find value in your presence. Push me too far, and I might remember that debts can be paid in many currencies. The threat was clear. Her servitude, or her family's suffering. Transformation or damnation. He was backing her into a corner, and they both knew it. But before she could respond, before she could force words past the terror closing her throat, something changed. The air itself seemed to shift, growing warmer, charged with an energy that had nothing to do with vampiric power. The heavy wooden door to the chamber exploded inward. Splinters flew through the air like wooden rain. Smoke and dust billowed into the room, and through it all, a figure emerged that made Luneth's heart stop, and then thunder back to life with desperate hope. Daylor Nightreach stood in the doorway, and he was magnificent. He filled the space with presence alone, his height and breadth making the chamber suddenly feel smaller. His long black hair was wild around his face, his beard framing an expression of barely controlled fury. He wore leather and battle scars, a king who had fought his way through whatever obstacles stood between him and this moment. But it was his eyes that captured her. Those same eyes from 2 years ago, now burning with purpose and protective rage. They found her instantly, scanning her for injury, for harm, for any sign that he was too late. And when he saw she was unharmed, when their gazes locked across the dust-filled room, Luneth felt something break open inside her chest. A sob she had been holding back for 2 years finally escaped her lips. He had come. After everything, after silence and distance and impossible odds, Daylor Nightreach had come for her. Fredward moved between them with supernatural speed, his elegant composure cracking to reveal the predator beneath. His fangs were visible now, elongated and sharp, designed to pierce and drain. His tattoos seemed to glow with dark energy, ancient magic responding to his anger. "You dare enter my domain, wolf? You dare destroy my property and threaten my household?" Daylor did not respond immediately. He was still looking at Luneth, and she could see something in his face that made her want to weep and sing simultaneously. Anguish and relief mixed together, the expression of someone who had been searching for something precious, and finally found it. When he spoke, his voice was like thunder contained in flesh, deep and resonant, and absolutely certain. "She is not your property. She never was, and I have come to end this." The laugh that escaped Fredward was bitter and sharp. How noble. The Alpha King descends from his throne to rescue a servant girl. But you are too late, Wolf. She has been mine for 2 years. Mine to command. Mine to watch. Mine to desire. You abandoned her to her fate. I was here. I kept her safe. Daylor's expression darkened. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and Luneth could see the effort it took for him not to transform, not to let the beast within tear through his human form and rip Fredward apart. "I did not abandon her. I searched for her the moment I learned she was missing. Do you think I did not feel it when she disappeared? Do you think I did not tear apart this territory looking for any sign of where she had gone?" His voice grew louder, more anguished, and Luneth felt tears streaming down her face now without shame. But she hid herself too well, protected her family by accepting servitude in silence. By the time I found the trail, months had passed. And then I learned who held her, and I knew I would need more than strength to break her free. I needed leverage. I needed allies. I needed time to build a case that even vampire law would recognize. He took a step forward, and the temperature in the room seemed to rise with his anger. "So do not speak to me of abandonment, creature of darkness. Every moment she has been here, I have been working to free her. Every night she has suffered under your roof. I have been planning this rescue, and now I am here, and you will release her, or I will burn this fortress to ash and salt the earth where it stood." Fredward bared his fangs fully now, his civilized veneer completely stripped away. This was the ancient vampire, the creature who had survived centuries by being more ruthless and more powerful than anything that challenged him. "You think you can threaten me, Alpha King? In my own home? You may be strong among your kind, but you face an elder vampire on his own ground. I have killed hundreds of your kind. I have bathed in the blood of werewolves who thought themselves mighty. Then you will find one more wolf a simple task. Daylor's form began to shift, not fully, but enough that Luneth could see the outline of his true nature pressing against his human skin. His eyes glowed golden, reflecting the primal power of his bloodline. Claws extended from his fingertips, each one capable of tearing through stone. Unless you are afraid. The challenge was clear, ancient and primal, a call to battle that transcended species and spoke to something fundamental about pride and power and territorial dominance. Fredward accepted with a snarl. They collided in the center of the room with a force that shook the foundations of the fortress. Vampire speed met werewolf strength, immortal cunning-faced primal fury. They were a blur of motion, too fast for human eyes to follow clearly. A dance of violence and survival that had been repeated throughout history whenever their kinds met in conflict. Luneth pressed herself against the wall, watching in horror and hope as the two most powerful beings she had ever known tried to destroy each other. She wanted to scream, to stop them, to make this end in some way that did not result in death and devastation. But she was frozen, caught between terror for Daylor's safety and the terrible knowledge that this battle was being fought because of her. For her. The debt, the servitude, the 2 years of suffering. It had all led to this moment where violence was the only language left to speak. Fredward was faster, his vampiric nature granting him speed that seemed to defy physics. He struck from multiple angles simultaneously, his clawed hands raking across Daylor's shoulders, drawing blood that steamed in the cold air. But Daylor was stronger, his werewolf heritage providing raw power that could shatter bone and bend steel. Each blow he landed sent Fredward crashing into walls hard enough to crack stone. His claws tore through the vampire's pale flesh, and though the wounds healed quickly, they still caused pain. They fought with the desperation of beings who had everything to lose. For Fredward, it was possession and pride, the refusal to surrender what he considered his. For Daylor, it was love and protection, the need to save the one person who had haunted his thoughts for 2 endless years. The chamber became a battlefield. Furniture splintered under the force of their combat. Tapestries caught fire from overturned candles. The very air seemed to scream with the energy of their conflict. And through it all, Luneth watched, her heart in her throat, her hands pressed against the cold stone wall as if she could draw strength from its permanence. She saw the moment when Daylor gained the upper hand. It happened in a blur of movement, a perfectly timed strike that caught Fredward off balance. The Alpha King's clawed hand closed around the vampire's throat, lifting him off the ground with terrifying ease. Fredward struggled, his supernatural strength pitted against Daylor's grip. But for the first time in centuries, he was outmatched. The Alpha King's power was not just physical, it was the accumulated strength of his entire pack, flowing through him in this moment of need, making him something more than merely strong. He was unstoppable. Daylor slammed Fredward into the stone floor with enough force to crater the ancient rock. The vampire's bones cracked audibly, and though they would heal, the damage was severe. Daylor raised his clawed hand for a killing blow, his face a mask of protective fury. This ends now. And Luneth knew he meant it. Daylor would kill Fredward, would end the vampire's eternal existence right here, right now, for the crime of holding her captive. It was justice, perhaps, or vengeance, or simply the territorial nature of an alpha protecting what was his. But she could not let it happen, not like this. Not with more blood spilled in her name. Stop. Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade through silk. Both combatants froze. Daylor with his hand raised to strike, Fredward broken on the floor beneath him. Luneth pushed away from the wall and walked forward on trembling legs. She knew she was risking herself, stepping between 2 predators in the throes of battle, but she could not remain passive any longer. Please, Daylor, do not kill him. The Alpha King turned his glowing eyes to her, and she saw the struggle within him. The need to protect her warred with his instinct to eliminate any threat. His hand remained raised, claws dripping with Fredward's blood. He kept you prisoner. He threatened your family. He deserves death. Perhaps he does. Luneth stopped just out of reach, close enough to be heard clearly, but not so close that she would interfere with Daelor's decision. But I do not want his death on my conscience. I do not want to be the reason more blood is spilled, more lives are ended. I have spent 2 years in darkness, Daelor. 2 years in shadow and cold. I do not want to emerge from that into more violence and death. Her voice broke slightly, emotion finally overwhelming the control she had maintained for so long. I just want to be free. I want this to end. Please. She saw the moment when her words reached him, when the fury in his eyes began to cool, replaced by something gentler. His hand slowly lowered, claws retracting back into human fingers. He released Fredward's throat and stepped back, though he positioned himself between Luneth and the vampire, a living shield. Fredward coughed, blood spattering the cracked stone beneath him. His white hair was matted with gore, his tattoos dim and fading as his strength ebbed. He looked diminished, ancient and tired in a way that vampires rarely allowed themselves to appear. You would show me mercy? After everything? His voice was rough, damaged vocal cords struggling to form words. He looked past Daelor to where Luneth stood, and there was genuine confusion in his expression. I kept you safe. I protected your family. I offered you everything I could give, and you still choose him. Luneth felt unexpected pity stir in her chest. Fredward was a monster, yes, but he was also a lonely creature who had mistaken possession for love, control for connection. In his own twisted way, he had cared for her, even if that caring had taken the form of captivity. I never chose to be here, Fredward. The debt brought me, not desire. You cannot force someone to love you, no matter how long you keep them or how much you offer them. My heart was always my own, and it was never yours to claim. She stepped closer to Daelor, feeling his warmth radiating in the cold chamber, his presence a comfort after 2 years of isolation. But I will not have you killed for the crime of loneliness. You will release the debt, release me, and release your claim on my family. And in return, you will live. That is the mercy I offer. Fredward was silent for a long moment, his ancient eyes studying her face as if trying to memorize every detail. Then, slowly, painfully, he nodded. The debt is void. You and yours are free. I will not pursue you or seek vengeance. This I swear on my name and my bloodline. The words had weight, the kind of magical binding that vampires took seriously. Luneth felt something lift from her shoulders, a burden she had carried so long she had forgotten what freedom felt like. Daelor growled softly, a warning that needed no translation. If you break this oath, if you come near her or her family again, there will be no mercy next time. I will hunt you across continents if necessary. Do you understand? Fredward's smile was bitter and broken. I understand, Alpha King. I understand that I have lost something I never truly possessed. I understand that love cannot be commanded or purchased or bound by debt. He pushed himself up slowly, his body healing even as they watched, bones knitting back together with supernatural speed. But there was a weariness in his movements that had nothing to do with physical injury. Go, take her from this place. Let me remember her as she was, not watch her walk away with you. That much pride at least grant me. Daelor hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. He turned to Luneth and held out his hand, an invitation and a promise combined in that simple gesture. Come with me. Luneth looked at his offered hand, calloused and strong, then up at his face. The fury had faded from his expression, replaced by something infinitely tender. This was the man she had loved from afar, the impossible dream she had clung to through darkness and despair. And he was real. He was here. He had come for her. She placed her hand in his, and the warmth of his touch after 2 years of cold stone and colder company nearly undid her. Tears streamed freely down her face now, but they were tears of relief, of release, of homecoming. Daylor pulled her close, wrapping his other arm around her shoulders, sheltering her against his broad chest. She could hear his heartbeat, strong and steady, could feel the rise and fall of his breathing, could smell leather and pine, and the indefinable scent that was uniquely him. I have you now. You are safe. Nothing will harm you again. I swear it. His voice rumbled through his chest, and Luneth felt herself beginning to shake as the enormity of everything finally crashed over her. 2 years of holding herself together, of maintaining control, of surviving in darkness, it all came rushing out in great gasping sobs against Daylor's chest. He held her through it, one hand stroking her white hair gently, murmuring soft words of comfort in a language she did not know but understood instinctively. The language of protection, of safety, of belonging. Behind them, Fredward watched in silence, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned away, walking deeper into the shadows of his fortress, disappearing like mist in morning light. Daylor lifted Luneth effortlessly, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing. He carried her out of that chamber of shadows, through corridors she had walked as a prisoner, past guards who parted before the Alpha King with fear and respect. Out into the night. The air outside was crisp and clean, free of the oppressive weight that had filled Fredward's fortress. Above them, clouds parted to reveal stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Luneth inhaled deeply, tasting freedom for the first time in 2 years. Daylor carried her to the edge of the forest, where several large wolves waited in the shadows. His pack, she realized. They had come with him, ready to fight if needed, to support their alpha in his mission of rescue. One of the wolves, a large gray female, approached and shifted into human form. She was tall and battle-scarred, with kind eyes that assessed Luneth with professional concern. Is she injured, Daylor? No, Mira, but she has been through much. We return home tonight. Have the healers ready. The woman nodded and shifted back, loping off into the forest to carry the message ahead. The other wolves followed suit, melting into the darkness to guard their passage home. Daylor finally set Luneth down, but he kept his hands on her shoulders, steadying her. In the starlight, she could see his face clearly, and what she saw there made her breath catch. He looked at her with such intensity, such raw emotion, that she felt exposed and cherished simultaneously. His dark eyes held years of searching, months of planning, hours of fighting, all condensed into this single moment of finally having found what he sought. I thought I had lost you forever. His voice was rough with emotion, the careful control of the Alpha King cracking to reveal the man beneath. When you disappeared, when I could not find any trace of where you had gone, I feared the worst. I feared you were dead, or taken so far beyond my reach that I would never see you again. It nearly destroyed me, Luneth. The not knowing, the helplessness. Luneth reached up with trembling fingers, touching his bearded face gently, needing to confirm he was real, and not some desperate dream her mind had conjured. I protected them. My family. That was all I could do. I could not let them suffer for my father's mistakes, even if it meant sacrificing myself. I know. I understand why you did it. But it does not make it hurt less. It does not erase the 2 years you suffered alone. He caught her hand, pressing it against his cheek, his eyes closing briefly as if savoring the contact. When I finally discovered where you were, when I learned that Fredward Mullins held you, I wanted to storm his fortress immediately. But I knew that would only result in war between our kinds, and you would be caught in the middle. So I did something harder than fighting. I waited. I planned. I gathered allies and built a case that even vampire law would have to acknowledge. He opened his eyes again, and she saw the toll that patience had taken on him. Every day I waited was torture. Every night I imagined what you might be enduring. But I knew that the only way to truly free you was to come with such power and such righteousness that even Fredward could not refuse without losing face among his own kind. You came for me. The words were simple, but they held everything she felt. Wonder, gratitude, love, all tangled together in a truth so profound it made her dizzy, always. I would have torn down the world to find you, Luneth. I would have challenged every vampire in existence if that was what it took. You were never forgotten, never abandoned. Not for a single moment. He drew her closer, until their foreheads touched, until she could feel his breath against her lips. I loved you from the moment I saw you 2 years ago. I loved you when you disappeared. I loved you every day you were gone, and I will love you until the day I die and beyond. If there is anything beyond. You are mine, Luneth Frostmere, as I am yours. That is the truth of it. Luneth felt her heart breaking and healing simultaneously, shattered pieces coming back together stronger than before. She had held his memory close for 2 years, using it as a light in the darkness, but she had never truly believed he felt the same. She was nobody, nothing. Just a servant girl paying off a debt. But the way he looked at her now made her feel like a queen. I loved you too. I still do. You were the only thing that kept me sane in that place. Every time Fredward demanded something of me, I would think of you and remember that I was more than what he tried to make me. I belonged to myself, and I gave my heart to you freely, even if I thought I would never see you again. Daelor made a sound that was half growl, half groan, and then his lips were on hers, claiming her mouth with a desperation that spoke of 2 years of longing and denial. She kissed him back with equal fervor, pouring everything she felt into that contact, all the pain and fear and hope and love she had carried alone. The kiss was fire after years of ice, life after existing in shadows, connection after isolation. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. And when they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard, their eyes bright with tears and desire and overwhelming emotion. Come home with me, not as a subject or a servant, but as my equal, as my mate, if you will have me. Rule beside me, Luneth. Let me spend the rest of my life making up for the 2 years you suffered. She wanted to say yes immediately, to throw herself into this offer without hesitation. But there was something else, something stirring in her awareness that she needed to acknowledge before she could move forward. Something that would change everything. Daelor, I need to tell you something. Something that happened. She saw his expression shift, concern replacing passion. His hands tightened slightly on her shoulders. What is it? Did he harm you? Did Fredward do something? No, not harm. Not exactly. But while I was there, while I was under his control, there were nights when my memory is unclear. Times when I felt strange, disconnected, as if I was not fully myself. He never forced himself on me in the way you might fear. But there were rituals, ceremonies, things I do not fully understand. Daelor's jaw clenched, his protective anger rising again. What kind of rituals? Blood rituals. Vampire magic. He said it was to strengthen the binding of the debt, to ensure my compliance. But recently I have begun to feel different, changed in ways I cannot fully explain. She took a shaky breath, gathering courage for the next words. I think I might be pregnant. The silence that followed was deafening. Daelor stared at her, his expression cycling through shock, confusion, and something that might have been grief or rage or fear. She could not read him clearly, and that terrified her more than anything. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled, forced into calmness through sheer will. "Are you certain?" "Not completely. But my body feels different. There are signs. I need to see a healer to be sure. But I believe it to be true. And the child, if there is one. Do you know who the father is?" Luneth looked away, unable to meet his eyes as she spoke the terrible truth. "I do not know. It could be from the rituals, some dark magic that I do not understand, or it could be from before, from something I have forgotten. My memories of certain nights are fragmented, unclear. I cannot say with certainty." She forced herself to look back at him, needing to see his reaction even though it might destroy her. "I understand if this changes things between us. I understand if you do not want me now, knowing that I might carry a child whose origin is uncertain. But I needed to tell you the truth. You deserve honesty after everything." Daelor was quiet for a long time, his face unreadable in the starlight. Luneth felt her heart cracking with each second of silence, certain that she was watching her chance at happiness slip away before she had even truly grasped it. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached out and placed his large hand on her stomach, covering the place where new life might be growing. "If you carry a child, then I will raise that child as my own. The circumstances of conception do not matter to me, Luneth. What matters is that you are here, alive and free. What matters is that you are mine, and I am yours. A child, regardless of its origin, would be a blessing, not a burden." She felt tears spilling down her cheeks again, unable to believe what she was hearing. But it might be his. It might be the vampire's child, born from magic and darkness. Then it will be a child who deserves love and protection all the more. Daelor's voice was firm, absolute, leaving no room for argument. "I am Alpha King of my pack, Luneth. I make the rules. I decide what matters and what does not. And I decide that any child you bear will be raised as pack, will be loved and cherished and protected with the full force of my power. That is my decree." He leaned down, pressing his forehead to hers again, his hand still resting protectively over her stomach. "You are not alone in this. You will never be alone again. We will face whatever comes together, as mates, as partners, as family. Do you understand?" Luneth nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. She had expected rejection, judgment, abandonment. Instead, she found acceptance so complete, it made her previous suffering seem almost worthwhile, if only because it led her to this moment of absolute belonging. "I love you." The words came out as a whisper, but they carried the weight of 2 years of loneliness and longing. "I love you more than I thought it was possible to love anyone. You are my salvation, Daelor Nightreach. You are my home, and you are mine." He kissed her again, gentler this time, but no less meaningful. Then he swept her back up into his arms, cradling her against his chest as he began to walk into the forest, following the path his pack had taken. The trees closed around them, blocking out the stars but not the sense of safety that radiated from Daelor's presence. Luneth rested her head against his shoulder, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his warmth seep into her bones, finally allowing herself to believe that this was real. She was free. She was loved. She was going home. Behind them, in his fortress of shadows, Fredward Mullins stood at a window watching the forest where they had disappeared. His hand rested on the cold glass, his expression distant and grieving. He had loved her in his way, had offered her everything he knew how to give. But love could not be commanded or purchased or bound by obligation. It had to be freely given, freely received, or it was not love at all. He had learned that lesson too late. The vampire turned away from the window, walking back into the depths of his ancient home. He would recover from this wound as he had recovered from countless others over the centuries. He would continue his eternal existence, would find new ways to occupy the endless years ahead. But he would remember her, the girl in the red dress with white hair and defiant eyes, the one who had taught him that immortality did not grant immunity from heartbreak. That would be his curse and his reminder, to live forever knowing what he had held and lost. Meanwhile, in the forest, Daelor carried Luneth deeper into pack territory. Other wolves joined them along the way, flanking their alpha king and his rescued mate, offering silent support and protection. They traveled through the night, Daelor never tiring, never slowing, his supernatural endurance allowing him to carry her as if she weighed nothing. Luneth dozed fitfully against his chest, years of tension finally releasing as she felt truly safe for the first time in so long. Dawn was breaking when they reached the pack's central compound. It was a collection of buildings nestled in a valley, blending naturally with the forest around it. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Luneth could hear the sounds of community waking, children laughing, people calling greetings to one another. This was civilization, but not the cold stone civilization of Fredward's fortress. This was warmth and life and connection, everything she had been denied. Daelor carried her directly to the largest building, a longhouse that served as his personal dwelling and the administrative center of the pack. Inside, fires burned in hearths, and healers waited with supplies already prepared. Mira, the woman who had shifted earlier, approached with professional concern. "We have prepared a room for her, Daelor. The healers are ready to examine her when she is comfortable." Luneth found her voice, speaking for the first time to someone other than Daelor or Fredward in what felt like ages. "I can walk. You do not need to carry me any longer." Daelor looked down at her, a small smile crossing his stern features. "I know you can. But I find I am reluctant to let you go just yet. Indulge me a little longer." She felt herself blushing, warmth spreading through her cheeks that had nothing to do with the fires burning in the hearths. She nodded, settling back against his chest, content to be held and protected and cherished. He carried her to a private room at the back of the longhouse. It was spacious and comfortable, with a large bed covered in furs, a fireplace already burning, and windows that let in the morning light. It was more luxury than she had known in years, and yet the most valuable thing in the room was the man who gently set her on her feet beside the bed. "The healers will want to examine you, to ensure you are healthy, and to confirm what you suspect about the pregnancy. I will be right outside if you need me. You are safe here, Luneth. Completely safe." She caught his hand before he could leave, holding on tight. "Will you tell them? About the uncertainty of the child's father?" Daelor's expression hardened slightly, the protective alpha rising to the surface. "I will tell them what they need to know to care for you properly. But I will also make it clear that any child you bear is under my protection and will be raised as pack without question or judgment. Anyone who has a problem with that will answer to me personally." His tone left no room for argument, and Luneth felt a wave of gratitude so strong it made her knees weak. She had expected complications, whispered rumors, judgment from those who would question a child of uncertain origin. But Daelor was making it clear that his word was law, and his word was that she and any child she bore would be protected absolutely. "Thank you. Do not thank me for doing what is right." He lifted her hand to his lips, kissing her knuckles gently. "Rest now. Let the healers do their work. When you wake, I will be here, and we will talk more about our future together." He left reluctantly, and moments later, 2 female healers entered. They were gentle and professional, their questions clinical, but not invasive. They examined her carefully, noting scars from her time in servitude, checking for malnutrition or lasting damage. Finally, the elder of the 2, a woman with graying hair and wise eyes, confirmed what Luneth had suspected. "You are indeed pregnant. Early still, perhaps 6 weeks along. The child appears healthy based on what I can determine at this stage." The woman paused, her expression thoughtful. There is something unusual, though. A trace of magic surrounding the pregnancy. Nothing harmful, but definitely present. It suggests that the conception may not have been entirely natural. Luneth felt her stomach twist. So Fredward had been involved somehow. The rituals had not just been about binding the debt. They had been about something more, something darker. Can you tell who the father is? The healer shook her head. Not with certainty. The magic makes it difficult to determine paternity through normal means. We would need more advanced divination. And even then, it might not be conclusive. The child's nature will become clearer as the pregnancy progresses. But for now, all I can say is that you carry life, and that life deserves care, regardless of its origin. Luneth nodded, fighting back tears. The uncertainty was almost worse than knowing definitively one way or another. Was this Daelor's child, conceived through some forgotten moment? Or was it Fredward's, the result of dark magic and manipulation? She did not know, and that not knowing would haunt her. The healers left her to rest, promising to check on her regularly. Luneth lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on her still flat stomach. Inside her, a new life was growing, a child who might be wolf or vampire or something in between. A child whose existence would raise questions that might never have satisfactory answers. But as she lay there, feeling the warmth of the fire and the softness of the furs and the safety of Daelor's protection, she made a decision. She would love this child, regardless of who had fathered it, regardless of the circumstances of conception, regardless of what complications might arise. This child was hers, and it would be loved fiercely and completely. That was the only certainty she needed. Days passed into weeks. Luneth slowly adapted to life in the Pack compound, learning names and faces, discovering the rhythms of this community so different from both her small village and Fredward's cold fortress. Daelor was a constant presence, attentive but not smothering, giving her space to find herself again while making it clear he was always available if she needed him. She watched him with his pack, and saw the duality of his nature clearly. To the world, to potential threats, to those who challenged his authority, he was fierce and uncompromising. The Alpha King, ruler of his territory, protector of his people. His word was law, his judgment final. He could be hard as stone when necessary, ruthless in defense of those under his care. But with her, he was different. Gentle and patient, his touches careful, his words soft. He brought her food when she struggled with morning sickness. He held her when nightmares woke her screaming. He talked to her about everything and nothing, sharing his thoughts and listening to hers with equal attention. He was teaching her that she mattered, that her voice deserved to be heard, that she was worthy of respect and care. It was a lesson she had forgotten during her servitude, and relearning it was both painful and healing. One evening, as they sat together watching the sunset from a balcony overlooking the valley, Daelor finally broached a subject they had been dancing around. The Pack is curious about you. They want to know who you are to me, what your place will be here. Luneth tensed slightly, old fears rising. She was carrying a child of uncertain origin, a fact that could not be hidden forever. What would the Pack think of that? What would they think of her? What have you told them? Daelor took her hand, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on her palm. I have told them that you are my mate, that you endured great suffering with tremendous courage, that you are to be treated with the respect and honor due to the Alpha's chosen partner, and that anyone who questions your place here will answer to me personally. He turned to face her more fully, his dark eyes serious. But I have not yet made it official. I wanted to wait until you were ready, until you felt strong enough to stand before the Pack and accept the mate bond formally. Luneth's breath caught. The mate bond was serious, a magical and emotional connection that would tie her to Daelor permanently. It was what she wanted, what she had dreamed of. but the timing complicated things. What about the child? What will the pack think when they learn I am pregnant and we have only just been reunited? Daylor's jaw tightened. I have been thinking about that. We could wait to announce the pregnancy until after the mate bond is established. Let the pack believe the child is mine, conceived after our bonding. It would be simpler, would avoid difficult questions. But Luneth was already shaking her head. No. No more lies. No more hiding. I spent 2 years living in shadows and deception. I will not start this new life the same way. She stood, facing him directly, her white hair catching the evening light. I want to be honest with your pack, Daylor. I want them to know the truth. That I was held captive. That I may carry a child whose father is uncertain. That I come to you not as some pure innocent, but as someone who has survived darkness and emerged scarred, but unbroken. She took a shaky breath. If they cannot accept that, then perhaps I do not belong here, but I will not build our future on comfortable lies. Daylor rose as well, and for a moment, she thought he might argue. But then his fierce expression softened into something like pride. You are braver than I gave you credit for, and you are right. The pack deserves honesty, and you deserve to be accepted for who you truly are, not some sanitized version that makes everyone comfortable. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close. We will announce everything at the next pack gathering. Your identity, our mate bond, your pregnancy, all of it. And we will face whatever reaction comes together. Luneth rested her head against his chest, drawing strength from his certainty. What if they reject me? What if they cannot accept a mate who carries such complications? Then they will learn that their alpha's choice is not subject to their approval. His voice held steel beneath the gentleness. I chose you, Luneth Frostmere. I would have chosen you if you came to me untouched and innocent. I choose you now, carrying another's possible child and bearing the scars of captivity. My choice is made, and it is permanent. The pack will accept that, or they will leave. She tilted her head back to look at him, seeing the absolute conviction in his face. You would really risk division in your pack for me? I would risk everything for you, but I do not think it will come to that. My pack respects strength and courage, and you embody both. Once they know your story, once they understand what you endured and how you survived, they will see what I see. A woman worthy of being their alpha's mate. The pack gathering was held 3 days later under a full moon. The entire community assembled in a natural amphitheater formed by ancient trees, their branches creating a cathedral-like space lit by torches and moonlight. Luneth stood beside Daylor at the center, wearing a dress of deep blue that someone from the pack had gifted her. Her white hair was loose around her shoulders, and her hand rested unconsciously on her stomach, a protective gesture she was not even aware of making. Daylor addressed his pack with the commanding presence of a born leader, his voice carrying easily through the gathered crowd. My brothers and sisters, my pack, I have called you here tonight to witness something significant. For 2 years I have searched for someone precious who was taken from me. For 2 years I have worked tirelessly to secure her freedom. And now she stands beside me, and I claim her as my mate before you all. A murmur ran through the crowd, curious and interested. Luneth saw friendly faces and uncertain ones, supporters and skeptics. Daylor continued, his hand finding hers and holding tight. But there are things you must know about Luneth Frostmere before you welcome her as your alpha's mate. She does not come to us untouched by darkness. She has survived 2 years of captivity under vampire control, held as payment for a debt that was not hers. She endured that suffering to protect her family, sacrificing her freedom so that others might live safely. His voice grew harder, more forceful. And during that captivity, she was subjected to rituals and magic that have left their mark. She carries within her a child whose paternity is uncertain. That child might be mine, conceived in a moment of connection before her captivity. Or that child might belong to the vampire who held her, born of dark magic and manipulation. We do not know, and we may never know with certainty. The murmuring grew louder now, voices rising in shock and concern. Luneth felt her courage wavering, fear creeping in at the edges of her resolve. But Daylor's hand tightened on hers, anchoring her. I tell you this because Luneth demanded honesty. She refused to build our life together on comfortable lies. She insisted you know the truth, even though that truth is complicated and uncomfortable. That is the kind of courage she possesses. That is the kind of integrity she embodies. He pulled her closer to his side, his body language making his position unmistakably clear. I claim her as my mate regardless of these complications. I will raise any child she bears as my own, will protect it with the full force of my power and authority. And I declare here and now that anyone who questions her place beside me, anyone who treats her or her child with anything less than respect, will answer to me personally. The silence that followed was heavy and tense. Luneth could feel hundreds of eyes on her, judging, assessing, deciding. She wanted to run, to hide, to disappear back into the shadows where judgment could not reach her. Then Mira, the gray-haired warrior who had been part of Luneth's rescue, stepped forward from the crowd. I was there when our alpha stormed the vampire's fortress. I saw him fight for her freedom. I heard her beg him to spare her captor's life, even after everything she had suffered. That showed me a woman of great compassion and strength. She looked directly at Luneth, her expression warm. I welcome you as our alpha's mate, and I pledge to protect your child as I would any pack member, regardless of its origin. Another voice rose from the crowd, this one belonging to one of the healers who had examined Luneth. I have tended to her wounds. I have seen the scars of her captivity. No one who has not endured such suffering can judge her for it. I welcome her. More voices joined in, one after another, pack members stepping forward to offer their support. Not all of them, Luneth noticed. There were some who remained silent, their expressions doubtful or disapproving. But the majority, the overwhelming majority, were accepting her, were welcoming her home. Tears streamed down her face as she realized what was happening. These people, this pack, they were choosing to embrace her despite her complications. They were offering her something she had thought lost forever. Belonging. Daylor raised his free hand, and silence fell again. Then it is decided. Luneth Frostmere is my mate, recognized and accepted by the pack. We will perform the bonding ritual tonight, under this full moon, witnessed by all of you. The ritual itself was ancient and beautiful. Daylor and Luneth stood facing each other in the center of the amphitheater, surrounded by the assembled pack. A priestess, old and wise, guided them through the ceremony. They exchanged vows, speaking promises of loyalty and protection and partnership. They marked each other with ceremonial paint, symbols of connection and commitment. And finally, under the light of the full moon, they allowed their blood to mingle. A tiny cut on each palm pressed together, sealing the bond with magic as old as the werewolf race itself. Luneth felt the bond snap into place like a lock clicking closed, a connection forming between her heart and Daylor's that transcended physical distance or circumstance. She could feel him now, his emotions echoing in her chest, his presence a constant warmth in the back of her mind. They were bound, permanently and completely. The pack howled their approval, the sound rising to the sky like a prayer or a promise. And Luneth howled with them, her voice joining the chorus, claiming her place among them. She belonged. Finally, after years of exile and servitude and isolation, she belonged. The celebration that followed lasted long into the night. There was food and music and dancing, joy flowing freely among the pack. Luneth found herself surrounded by well-wishers, pack members introducing themselves and offering congratulations. But eventually, Daylor claimed her, pulling her away from the crowd with a possessive gentleness that made her pulse quicken. They walked together through the forest, following a path lit by moonlight, until they reached a smaller building set apart from the main compound. This is ours. A private space, away from the demands of leadership and community. Our sanctuary. He opened the door, revealing a cozy interior. There was a large bed, a fireplace already burning, and windows that looked out over the forest. It was simple but beautiful, a place designed for rest and intimacy and peace. Luneth walked inside, running her fingers over smooth wooden furniture, feeling the softness of woven rugs beneath her feet. This was real. This was hers. This was home. Daylor closed the door behind them, and suddenly the atmosphere changed, became charged with awareness and desire. They were alone for the first time since the bonding, and the connection between them hummed with possibility. He approached her slowly, giving her time to object or pull away. But Luneth did not want distance. She had spent 2 years cold and alone. She wanted warmth, wanted connection, wanted to feel alive and chosen and loved. She reached for him, and he came willingly, gathering her into his arms with reverent care. When he kissed her, it was different from before. The mate bond amplified everything, making every touch electric. Every sensation doubled as she felt both her own reaction and his echoing through their connection. "Are you certain you want this? We can wait if you are not ready." His voice was strained with the effort of holding back, of not simply claiming what the bond told him was his by right. But Luneth shook her head, pulling him closer. "I am certain. I want this. I want you. I have waited 2 years to feel alive again. Please, Daylor, help me remember what it is to be more than a victim or a captive. Help me remember what it is to be loved." His control shattered at her words. He kissed her again, deeper and more demanding, his hands beginning to explore her body with the patience of someone determined to memorize every detail. He undressed her slowly, reverently, kissing each new expanse of skin as it was revealed. When she stood naked before him, marked with faded scars from her captivity, she expected to feel vulnerable or ashamed. But the way he looked at her, with such hunger and adoration combined, made her feel powerful instead. "You are beautiful, every inch of you, every scar, every imperfection. You are perfect to me." He shed his own clothes quickly, revealing a body built for strength and battle. Muscles corded beneath tanned skin, scars marking him as a warrior who had fought and survived countless challenges. He was magnificent, and he was hers. They came together on the bed, bodies tangling in a dance as old as time. Daylor was careful at first, mindful of her pregnancy and her past trauma, but Luneth urged him on, needing to feel claimed and desired and wholly present in her own skin. The mate bond made everything more intense, their pleasure feeding back and forth between them in an endless loop of sensation. When they finally reached completion together, Luneth felt something inside her that had been frozen for 2 years, finally thaw and come back to life. She was whole again. They lay tangled together afterward, Daylor's hand resting protectively over her stomach, where their child, or another's child, grew. Neither of them spoke the uncertainty aloud, choosing instead to focus on the certainty of their bond. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Daylor's voice was drowsy but firm, his words a vow more binding than any ceremony. "Whatever this child is, whoever its father may be, it will be loved. You have my word on that, Luneth, my absolute and unbreakable word." She believed him. For the first time in her life, she trusted completely that someone would keep their promises to her. Months passed. Luneth's pregnancy progressed normally according to the healers, though the traces of magic remained, making it impossible to determine the child's paternity with certainty. Her belly grew round, and she felt the baby move inside her, small flutters that gradually became stronger kicks. The pack accepted her fully, though there were still some who watched her pregnancy with wary curiosity, wondering what kind of child would emerge. Would it be wolf or vampire or something unprecedented? Daylor remained constant throughout, his devotion never wavering. He attended every healer's appointment, felt every kick, talked to the growing baby as if it were already born and listening. He made it clear through action and word that this child was his regardless of blood. But Luneth sometimes caught him staring at her stomach with an expression she could not quite read. Concern, perhaps, or calculation. He was wondering the same thing everyone was, she knew. What would this child be? And what would that mean for all of them? She tried not to dwell on it, focusing instead on preparing for the birth, on learning her role as the alpha's mate, on building relationships within the pack. She was happy, genuinely happy, for the first time in years, but uncertainty gnawed at her in quiet moments. The child began moving more actively as the due date approached. Sometimes the movements felt normal, the natural kicks and shifts of a developing baby, but other times, there was something different about them, a strength that seemed unusual, or a pattern that felt almost deliberate, as if the child was already displaying personality or intent. The healers noted it, but could offer no explanations. They had never dealt with a pregnancy like this before, one touched by vampire magic and claimed by wolf authority. They were in uncharted territory. One night, 7 months into the pregnancy, Luneth woke from a nightmare to find Daylor already awake beside her, his hand on her stomach, feeling the baby move. "Could not sleep?" she murmured, still half lost in the fading images of her dream. He shook his head, his expression troubled in the dim light. "I was thinking about Fredward, about what he might have done during those rituals, about what magic he might have woven." Luneth felt a chill run through her despite the warmth of the room. "Do you regret claiming me? Regret accepting this child as yours?" "Never." His response was immediate and fierce, his hand tightening on her stomach. "But I would be lying if I said I was not concerned. Vampire magic is old and dark, and we do not fully understand what was done to you. This child might be perfectly normal, might be wolf or human, or some benign combination. Or it might be something else entirely, something we are not prepared to handle." He met her eyes, and she saw genuine worry there beneath his determination. "Whatever happens, whatever this child is, we will face it. But I would be failing in my duty as both your mate and this pack's alpha if I did not acknowledge the uncertainty and prepare for all possibilities." Luneth understood. She felt the same fears, the same concerns. But she also felt the life inside her, felt its vitality and its innocence, and she could not bring herself to fear it. This baby is not responsible for the circumstances of its conception. Whatever it is, it deserves love. I know, and it will have that love. From both of us, and from this pack. That much I promise. He kissed her forehead, then her belly, a tender gesture that made her eyes sting with tears. "Sleep now. You need rest for what is to come." The labor began on a night of storms. Thunder rolled across the valley, and lightning split the sky as Luneth's contractions started. It seemed fitting, somehow, that this child should come into the world, accompanied by such dramatic weather. The healers gathered, along with Daylor, who refused to leave her side despite tradition suggesting alpha males stayed distant during birthing. He held her hand through each contraction, his strength and presence an anchor as she rode waves of pain. Hours passed. The storm outside intensified, wind howling through the trees like a living thing. And inside, Luneth labored to bring new life into the world, her body working with ancient instinct to push this child from darkness into light. Finally, as dawn began to break and the storm started to subside, the baby emerged with a cry that filled the room. The healers worked quickly, clearing the infant's airways, checking for problems, their expressions carefully neutral as they assessed the newborn. Luneth reached for her child with trembling arms, desperate to hold it, to see it, to know finally what life she had carried all these months. The head healer placed the baby in her arms, and Luneth looked down at her child for the first time. It was beautiful. A girl, small but healthy, with a shock of dark hair already visible on her tiny head. Her eyes were closed, but when they opened, Luneth saw they were a deep, unusual color, somewhere between gold and red, like amber catching firelight. Not quite wolf, not quite vampire. Something unique. She has fangs. The healer's voice was quiet, carefully neutral. Luneth looked more closely and saw that the baby's mouth, though small and perfect, did indeed contain tiny points where canines should be. Not fully developed vampire fangs, but not entirely human either. But she also has this. Daylor's voice was thick with emotion. He reached out to touch the baby's tiny hand, and as he did, a subtle glow seemed to pass over her skin, the golden cast of werewolf magic, responding to the alpha's touch. She is both. Wolf and vampire, combined in ways we have never seen. The healer spoke with scientific fascination, but Luneth heard the underlying concern. What would this mean? How would such a child develop? What powers would she possess? What hungers would she feel? She is ours. Daylor's voice cut through the speculation with absolute certainty. He moved to sit beside Luneth on the bed, wrapping his arm around both mother and child. Whatever she is, however she develops, she is our daughter. My daughter. I claim her as pack, as heir, as blood of my blood regardless of whose seed created her. Let that be recorded and understood by all. The healers bowed their heads in acknowledgement. Whatever concerns they might have, the Alpha's word was law. Luneth looked down at the tiny life in her arms, this impossible child born of complicated circumstances, and felt her heart expand with love so fierce it bordered on pain. Aurora. She spoke the name that had come to her in that moment, feeling its rightness. Her name is Aurora, dawn after darkness, light emerging from shadow. Daylor repeated the name softly, testing it, then smiled. Aurora Nightreach, our daughter. And so the child was named and claimed, welcomed into the world with all the love and uncertainty that her existence carried. The first months were challenging. Aurora was not like other babies. She grew faster. Her development accelerated in ways that concerned the healers. She needed both milk and small amounts of blood, her hybrid nature demanding sustenance from both sides of her heritage. Daylor arranged for donated blood from willing pack members, treating it as a normal requirement rather than something shameful or monstrous. The pack, seeing their alpha's acceptance, followed his lead. Aurora was strange, yes, but she was also theirs. Luneth watched her daughter with constant amazement. Aurora was alert and aware far earlier than normal babies, her unusual eyes tracking movement with uncanny precision. She was strong too, her grip powerful enough to leave marks when she clutched at fingers or toys. But she was also tender and loving, responding to affection with gurgles and smiles, reaching for her parents with evident joy. She was not a monster, Luneth realized. She was simply different, unique, a being that represented a bridge between two ancient species that had been enemies for millennia. She was hope in her way, proof that even darkness could be transformed into something beautiful. 6 months after Aurora's birth, a message arrived that made Luneth's blood run cold. Fredward Mullins requested an audience. The vampire had honored his oath, staying away from pack territory, making no attempt to contact Luneth or interfere with her new life. But now he was asking permission to visit, to see with his own eyes what had become of the woman he had once kept captive. Daylor's immediate instinct was to refuse, but Luneth, surprising herself, argued for allowing the visit. He has a right to see her, if she is his daughter. And we deserve to know the truth, as much as the truth can be known. Daelor did not like it, his protective instincts raging against allowing the vampire anywhere near his mate and child. But he respected Luneth's wishes, and so the meeting was arranged under strict conditions. Fredward arrived at sunset, accompanied by no guards or servants. He looked different than Luneth remembered. Not diminished exactly, but changed. His white hair was shorter, his tattooed skin less aggressively displayed beneath simple clothing. He carried himself with less arrogance, more weariness. He looked, she realized with shock, humbled. They met in a neutral space, a clearing in the forest with Daelor's pack positioned in the trees around them, ready to intervene at the first sign of threat. Luneth held Aurora, now 6 months old and alert, her unusual eyes watching the newcomer with apparent curiosity. Fredward stopped several feet away, his gaze fixed on the child in Luneth's arms. For a long moment, he said nothing, just stared with an expression that cycled through shock, wonder, and something that might have been grief. She has my eyes. His voice was rough, barely audible. Or rather, she has eyes like mine once were, before I was turned. That color, that specific shade, I have not seen it in centuries. Luneth felt her stomach drop. So it was true then. Aurora was his daughter, born of the magic he had woven during those rituals. But Daelor stepped closer to Luneth, his presence a solid wall of protection and support. Biology is not the only thing that makes a father. I have raised her from birth. I have provided for her, protected her, loved her as my own. Whatever genetic material contributed to her existence, she is my daughter in every way that matters. Fredward finally tore his gaze away from Aurora to look at Daelor, and Luneth saw acknowledgement in the vampire's expression. I know. I can see the way you look at her, at them. You love them as I could not, as I did not understand how to love. I do not come here to claim her, Alpha King. I come to see what my actions created, and to offer what I can in reparation. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small item, holding it out carefully. It was a pendant, ancient and beautiful, crafted from silver and set with a deep red stone. This has been in my family since before I was turned. It is a protection charm, one of the few things I possess that is not tainted by vampire magic. I give it to Aurora as both an apology and a blessing. May she grow strong and wise. May she bridge the darkness and light that created her. May she be more than the sum of her origins. Luneth looked at Daelor, silently asking permission. He hesitated, then nodded once, sharp and reluctant. She stepped forward, Aurora secure in her arms, and accepted the pendant from Fredward's pale hand. Their fingers brushed for just a moment, and she felt the coldness of him, so different from Daelor's warmth. Thank you, for giving her life, whatever the circumstances, and for staying away to let her grow in peace. That took strength. Fredward's smile was bitter and sad. It took necessity. I have learned much in these months, Luneth, about love and loss and the futility of trying to possess what should be freely given. You taught me that, though the lesson came at great cost to us both. He looked at Aurora one more time, and this time his expression was simply wistful. She is beautiful, extraordinary. I hope she finds happiness in this life, and that the complications of her nature do not bring her suffering. Then he stepped back, bowing slightly to both Daelor and Luneth. I will not trouble you again. Live well, love fiercely, and tell Aurora, when she is old enough to understand, that her biological father's greatest regret is that he did not learn how to love properly until it was too late. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the gathering shadows as easily as if he were made of smoke and twilight. Luneth watched him go, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. relief that he had not tried to claim Aurora, pity for his loneliness, gratitude that he had given them this closure, and certainty that, whatever blood ran in her daughter's veins, Aurora was theirs. She belonged to the pack, to Daylor, to Luneth. She was loved, and that was what mattered. Daylor pulled both of them close, his large body sheltering his family against the cooling evening air. It is done then. The truth is known, and still nothing changes. Aurora is ours. You are mine. And this life we have built together stands strong regardless of the shadows that created it. Luneth leaned into him, feeling Aurora squirm happily between them, and knew he was right. They had emerged from darkness into light. They had survived captivity, uncertainty, and the complexities of a child born from impossible circumstances. And they had emerged stronger, bound together by choice and love and determination. As they walked back toward the pack compound, Luneth looked up at the sky where stars were beginning to emerge in the deepening twilight. Each star was a tiny light against vast darkness, she thought. Small and seemingly insignificant individually, but together, creating enough illumination to navigate by. That was what they had created, a constellation of love and acceptance, and chosen family, bright enough to guide them through whatever darkness might come. She was free. She was loved. And that finally was enough. Years would pass, and Aurora would grow into her unique heritage, learning to balance the wolf and vampire aspects of her nature. She would face challenges and prejudices, would struggle with questions of identity and belonging that no one else could fully understand. But she would never doubt that she was loved. She would always know that she had been chosen, claimed, protected by parents who saw past biology to the essential truth of who she was. She would be the bridge between two worlds, the proof that even from darkness and complication, beauty could emerge. And in time, she would come to understand that being different was not a curse, but a gift. That her unique nature allowed her to see and understand things that others, trapped in singular identities, could never comprehend. She would be extraordinary, but for now, she was simply a baby held safely between parents who loved her fiercely, walking home under emerging stars, surrounded by pack who had chosen to accept what traditional thinking would have rejected. For now, that was all any of them needed. The rest would unfold in its own time, written in choices yet to be made, and futures yet to be determined. But the foundation was strong, built on love and forgiveness, and the courage to face complicated truths without flinching. That foundation would hold against whatever storms might come. And Luneth, walking beside her mate with her daughter in her arms, finally believed in happy endings. Not the simple kind from children's stories, where everything was neat and perfect and uncomplicated, but the real kind, the earned kind, the kind that acknowledged darkness while choosing light, the kind that transformed suffering into strength, the kind that proved love was always, always worth fighting for. That was her ending, and her beginning, and everything in between. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.